Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well. This is the show where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's a live show if it's February 18th, or actually for Stuart's perspective, February 19th. But it's live if it's February 18th, 5:15 GMT for about 45 minutes. So if you are here with us live, pop a comment in. Even if you're looking at this in the future, put a comment in, because we do go back to these and I will see those and our guests will see those. So what is this? The Franchise Show is a weekly live show that deals with all topics in franchising. And we have a lovely informal chat with a fantastic guest. And this week is no exception to that. And we also have a topic each week. Now, today's topic is franchise mediation in New Zealand. And today's guest is the lovely Stuart Gurman. Stuart, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Yeah, thank you very much, Harvey. Pleasure to be here.
You're most welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here. Excellent. Well, look, before we get too deep in today's conversation, perhaps you could do a little introduction to yourself, where you're based,
Sure.
and what you do. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. Yeah, so I'm Stuart Gurman. I live in Auckland, New Zealand, so it's quite a long way from the UK, but I often go to the UK on business, and my wife's got relatives in Somerset. So I'm a franchise lawyer. I've just come back from Las Vegas from the International Franchise Conference. So over there, I've got to call myself a franchise attorney, because you're attorneys in the US. I've been doing franchising for 40 years. I just love franchising. Why do I love it? Because of the relationships, the fact that entrepreneurs can expand their ideas and make other people successful, the fact that people can buy into a franchise, and it's much better than just working for an employer. I've been a past chairman of the Franchise Association of New Zealand, and I'm very active in international franchising. I have 4 children, 8 grandchildren, and the 9th is due in 4 weeks. So I'm very blessed with a family. And Auckland, New Zealand's a very vibrant city. New Zealand's got a population of about 5.6 million, but we're the size of the United Kingdom. So your land size, you've got probably 70 million people or plus. We've got 5.6. So you can come to New Zealand and just disappear in the bush. We've got wonderful bushwalks. But as far as franchising is concerned, it's very active here.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, a lovely introduction, Stuart. Thank you very much for that. Let's have a little look. We do have a few people who are with us live already. So let's make some introductions. We have the ever wise Simon Wise. Always good to have you with us, Simon. He's put hello, franchise friends. Really looking forward to hearing your thoughts, Simon, on franchise mediation and what that means for our industry, and how we can use this for the greater good of the industry. We have somebody new here. We've got Patrick Comerford. Great to have you with us, Patrick. He's put hi friends. Well, hi to you, Patrick. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on mediation and franchising in New Zealand. We have the lovely Tim Morris with us. Tim is a fantastic advocate and professional of franchising here in the UK. Always good to have Tim's thoughts on things. And he's put afternoon franchise family. Great to be here. Well, it's great to have you with us as well, Tim. And finally, we have the lovely Penny Hopkinson with us. Penny is one of our wonderful sponsors of the show. And Penny has written a fantastic book, and I'm going to put it up on the screen in a minute, and we're going to see if it's the right way round, Penny. And Penny has put, hello, Harvey and Stuart and all franchise friends. Well, here is the book. And is it going to be the right way round? Oh, no. There it is. It is the right way round. And if you are looking for someone to support you in your ops manual writing, then Penny is your lady. So please reach out to her, and I'll put a QR code on the screen in a minute. So, Stuart, let's get into this. Tell us your sort of your experience of, let's go mediation first. Let's go down that subject matter first, and then we'll dip into what it's like to franchise in New Zealand. So tell me why sort of mediation is so important to you as a lawyer, attorney, solicitor, whatever we're going to say.
Yeah. All the names. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mediation is so important because you're trying to keep the parties' relationship together. So franchising is based on relationships, the relationship between the franchisor, which is the brand owner and owns all the IP in the system, and each franchisee. So that relationship is very special. There's got to be mutual trust and respect on both sides. I've written many papers on the relationship, and I actually liken it to a marriage. It's that strong. And if it's not going well, then both parties are affected. So the franchisor wants to have happy franchisees in the system, and the franchisees joining a system to enjoy what they're doing, make money, and be, content. And franchise, the value of the franchise can grow, and so they buy in. They might buy greenfields and pay an upfront fee, or they buy an existing business. There will come a time they want to sell it, and they want a return on their investment. So when the franchise relationship is strained, that's when mediation comes in. So it's worth mentioning at this point, Harvey, that New Zealand, Singapore, and the United Kingdom are just about the only countries in the world with no franchise-specific legislation. So all the others are affected by mandatory disclosure and worse things. So in New Zealand, which is the most franchised country in the world per capita, we have 546 systems, business format franchise systems, which is confirmed by the survey of franchising conducted by Massey University in November 2024. Those systems have got to work, and there's lots of franchisees. So mediation is the process to keep the parties together. And many franchisors in New Zealand belong to the Franchise Association. That has a mandatory code of practice and ethics. I actually wrote it in 1996, and it hasn't changed much because I wrote the rules. That's when the Franchise Association was formed in New Zealand. And that's got compulsory dispute resolution clauses. So all the systems have to have dispute resolution clause in their franchise agreement. So what happens when there's a disagreement? So normally the parties sit down and resolve it, and 8 out of 10 that will be the case. If that doesn't happen, then they have to actually sit down and make an effort to negotiate a solution. And if they can't negotiate a solution, then mediation clocks in. So mediation is a voluntary process. I'm actually a mediator. I've done the course. I've been a mediator in disputes. I've been counsel for a franchisor in a mediation. I've acted for a franchisee or franchisees plural in the same system in a mediation, and it's got a very high success rate. So the New Zealand survey, and I've just got a little booklet here, Harvey, which was all published, and this is all sort of audited, but it has a section in on disputes, and it says the percentage of franchisees involved in a dispute in the last 12 months, 1.5%, very, very low.
Okay.
The percentage of franchise brands involved, 19%. So 19% of all the brands have been involved in a mediation. And how are disputes handled? Mediation, 24%, litigation, 8%, and via solicitor, 67%. So I often I'm asked to act for a franchisee. So let's say I'm acting for a franchisee who's been in the system for 5 years, has been happy, there's been a problem now, and they come to me and say, hey, we've got a problem with the franchisor, can you help? So a solicitor will write a letter after they've got all the facts to the franchisor, and that letter might fix it, or you get a letter back disputing the facts, and the result of that often is you go to mediation. So that's where by a solicitor. So think of mediation as a mechanism to resolve disputes with a high success rate. But remember, it's a voluntary process. So if the parties don't agree, I've had mediations where someone stormed out in the first half hour and it's all over. I mean, that's stupid because you put all this investment and to get it. So most mediations will go for a day or less than a day. So they're often allocated a day. Uh, and the next stage is litigation. So litigation sometimes is necessary, but it's pretty destructive in franchising. So basically, it's the divorce stage. Okay, the parties sort of hate each other, they're litigating, the relationship's over, and funny enough, the subject matter is always money. Okay, the relationship, the love has gone out the door or out the window, and it's money, and a mediation is often like that too. But I've had mediations where the parties are stressed, they come together, the dispute's resolved, and they still go back and carry on business because they're growing ups and they've got an investment. So that's basically the mediation.
Right, I love it. I mean, there's so many gems there that I've written down. We always get such value out of these conversations, and it's so important to have this as a potential option. I'm going to bring up a comment, actually, because this is all a conversation with our community. So I want to bring in something that Simon's put here and read this out, see what we make of this one, actually. Simon's put, franchise mediation is the future of our industry for settling disputes. Remember, there was something special that brought the parties together in the first place, franchisor and franchisee. So I am a great believer in finding resolutions to problems through discussion and reasonable dialogue without the wrecking ball of litigation. Yeah.
Great comment. And I know Simon Wise. He was with the BFA, British Franchise Association.
That's right.
And he's a great guy. And if I say he's very wise, it's not meant to be a pun, because he's actually very wise and experienced. He lives up to his name.
He's got the right name, hasn't he? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Not to the nice Simon.
We had a beer in London in April when I was over.
Oh,
and that was very special because I hadn't seen him for ages.
Wow, good stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, this is the thing, we're all one big community. We're one big family. At the beginning when we say hello, it's hello franchise friends, hello franchise family,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And Simon's absolutely right here. When these relationships started, they were started for extremely positive reasons. Someone really interested in a business, someone really valuing a business that someone's got on offer, and that franchisor really valuing that franchisee and wanting them to do well and wanting there to be success. So both parties start with an arrow heading in the right direction.
Yes.
And I think when these sometimes they're little problems that occur, right? And if they're left to stew or brew a little bit too long without being looked at, then that's when they can start to become really, really big problems, and they can affect your whole network as well, because your franchisees will talk to one another, and if it's not being resolved properly. So yeah, I like that. We've got a couple of other people here, so let's say hello. We've got Lewis from the Netherlands. Great to have you with us. We are truly multinational here today, all sides of our little round planet, aren't we? So great to have you with us. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Let's have another look at a comment here by Simon, because I like this one. Because there might be lots of people that are thinking that franchise mediation is something for them. They've been in the industry a while, they've seen both sides of an argument, and they can, help with this once they've done a course or whatever they need to do. Simon's put here, Stuart, what are the key personality traits for any mediator? What would you say for this one?
Yeah, good question, Simon. Right up the top would be an amazing ability to listen. If you don't listen, and a lot of people don't listen properly today, they interrupt you when you're talking, and they're not actually listening, So I put listening. You've got to be impartial. You've got to like people. Okay, so that just goes without saying, but I'll still say it. So a mediator is a skilled person who is very good at listening, analyzing problems, and try to reach try to solve a dispute between the parties. Often mediations are very sort of tense and stressful, so a mediator should have a calming influence. And so I've appeared before a number of mediators, And funnily enough, well, I found the worst mediator was a retired High Court judge. So if you go to litigation, and a lot of retired judges they want to be a mediator or an arbitrator, so they go into that. But if you go to litigation, the judge hears both sides and makes a decision and issues a judgment, and the judgment is it, unless you appeal it. But this High Court judge, who I respected, was too dogmatic, too didn't have the empathy which I require, which I think is very necessary. And so you've got to have all these sort of traits. So you sort of do a psychology course as part of your mediation in relation to analysing people. But right up there, Harvey, I mentioned again, is listening. So a mediator listens to both sides and then tries to identify the issues, writes the issues on a whiteboard and goes through the issues and gets the parties to agree. These are the issues. There are no more issues. Here's 8 bullet points. These are the issues. If you're going to want to introduce one, do it now, not in 6 hours, because we're going to talk about the issues.
I think that you keep, as I say, and some more real gems there. When you said there about listening, someone once said to me, and this was a fault on my part. I was doing a Zoom call with somebody and I was distracted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And it was just, I'm not normally, but I was. And he said, you need to listen, but listen with intent. And it really struck a chord. I mean, if you ever see me doing this, it's because I'm writing stuff down. Right?
That's fine. You're not about to leave.
No. And someone also said to me that you're born with 2 of these and 1 of these, and use them in that ratio.
Yes.
I think it's wise advice. But look, love that question, because there might be plenty of people that are looking to do it, and they need to see what type of character they are, and then look in their particular region if there's a course. And I think I was talking to Simon, and there was a course here in the UK. And there was one there in New Zealand. I think particularly when, you spoke earlier about the fact that we're in these unregulated markets. Now, There's a big debate, and we've had it before on this show, and we will have it again, whether that's right or wrong, whether that's good or bad. And it's probably likely a mixture of all those things.
Yes.
But I think it's really important, whether you're in a regulated or unregulated environment, to have mediation as that option. You had that, first of all, sit down and resolve, negotiate solution, then mediation. The last thing has always got to be litigation, hasn't it? Because
it is. Yes. And most dispute resolution clauses and agreements have, if you disagree on something you can't resolve it, you must go to mediation. Yes. But then nothing contained in the agreement will preclude a franchisor going to litigation for injunctive relief. So if you get a franchisee, stealing trade secrets or denigrating the trademark or leaving and breaching the restraint of trade, then nothing will preclude the franchisor from issuing injunctive relief. And for those who don't know, an injunction is sort of sudden death. You apply to the court. The interim injunction hearing is heard fairly quickly, because parties have got to get on with it, and the judge will either grant the injunction or not grant it, and then later it goes to substantive hearing, but that's weeks down the track. So just think of dispute resolution. We're trying to sit down and negotiate it. That doesn't work. We go to mediation. That doesn't work. And then you've got to think, what do we do now? Do we go to litigation? A lot of franchisors at that point will encourage the franchisee to say, look, you need to sell the business. We're not getting on. The mediation failed. I tried hard. You tried hard. There's no blame. It failed. We'll give you 6 months to sell the business. We will assist with prospective purchasers. But basically, you've got to get out of our system because we're wasting too much time with you. Mm-hmm. And it's a good principle. Like if you have 50 franchisees, which a lot of systems have in New Zealand, you'll have like 45 really good franchisees. You might rate differently, but there'll be like 4 or 5 which take 80% of the time of the franchise manager, because the 4 or 5 are stroppy, they're late in paying, they don't comply with the system. So it's the old 80%, 20% rule. And every franchisor has made a mistake in picking a franchisee. And again, that's another topic. How to select the right franchisee.
Oh, 100% it is. But you're absolutely right there. Look, let's have a look. We've got lots of comments coming in, and this is our conversation as a community. And I always like to bring all these conversations and questions in. First of all, let's welcome a few more people that have joined us, and then get to a few more questions as well. We've got Vikas. Hello, everyone from India. Well, Vikas, welcome to the Franchise Show. You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us here live. Please pop a comment in. Let us know what mediation is like in India and how you resolve things there. Great to have you with us. Patrick's come back with totally agree. You must listen. It's so important. Listening is so underused, undervalued sometimes, and it's so important in pretty much every walk of life. Love it. We've got questions coming up from Tim, from Mara, from Penny, so we will get to all of these, but let's first of all welcome Mara. Mara is from Italy, and it's great to have Mara with us, former guest on the show and hopefully future guest on the show. We must catch up, Mara. And Mara's put, hello, a great subject tonight. Well, yes, if you have just joined us, this is the Franchise Show, and tonight we are discussing franchise mediation, and we will be talking also about franchising in New Zealand in about 10 minutes time. So let's have a look. We've got a good question or a comment here from Simon. Simon's put, can someone without franchise experience be effective mediating in a franchise case?
Yes, Simon's a deep thinker.
He is very deep.
The answer is yes, but if you've got some franchising experience, it's like in another level. Yeah. So I've been before mediators, and they haven't been exposed to franchising, but they're really good mediators because they follow the sort of the rules and the skills of mediation. But if you've got that other level of understanding franchising and the relationship, I'd really put it up there. So the mediations I've done as a mediator, I just think because I've been 40 years in franchising, I've got something else to offer. If I'd never had any franchising experience, then you're sort of starting in a sort of a handicap. But if you follow the rules of mediation, because you've been trained, you can still get there. So that's how I'd answer that.
I think you're absolutely right. I think having experience in franchising can help with the empathy part of mediation.
Yeah,
it's going to be easier to empathize knowing that particular industry.
Yes.
But it's probably going to be easier to be impartial if you don't know the industry, because you're just listening to two different views, trying to find out where the issue sits and what the solution is. But yeah, love that question. Fantastic. Thanks, Simon, for that. Let's have a look here at what Mara's put. Trial is a knife. Mediation is a spoon. Best alternative solution philosophy. Yeah, I like that. When it gets to litigation, it is really it's over in terms of repairing a relationship. It's
a divorce.
Yeah,
it's and a lot of marital divorces are very messy and horrible. That's why I don't do family law. I'd rather have directors around the table scrapping than the husband and wife scrapping.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, when you're around the table, it can get, I imagine, quite hot-headed, and you've got to be, like you said, you said one of those things, calming influence. You've got to have a calming influence over it, because this is livelihoods we're talking about, and people that had real passion, and if things are going wrong, you've got to say, look, we've got to, try and find a way here. This is what we're here for, isn't it? So,
and I'm a great believer in pulling people together early rather than late. So if I get an aggressive letter from another lawyer about my client, and then I can write an aggressive letter back. But those letters, if they go on too long, you're sort of putting yourself in an entrenched position. So
Yeah.
often I've said to the other lawyer, look, we've got a disagreement here. Why don't you come into my boardroom with your client, and I'll suggest that I have my client in the boardroom too. The four of us or six of us will just get around the table with some water in the middle. You can have coffee, but that's it. And let's try and resolve it. And that has often worked, where the parties sort of come in hating each other, and then in the end, it's worked. The lawyers have taken a back seat. The parties have actually talked, and my office is next door to the Pullman Hotel. They go to the Pullman and have a beer or wine, and then the next day they just get back in the system.
Yeah.
So the moral there is keep them talking as far as they can, and don't let lawyers or solicitors, whatever you want to call them, destroy the relationship, because some lawyers are pretty good at that.
Yeah. I love that, talking from a point of view of being a lawyer, that you can recognize the fact that sometimes that does happen. And you're right. I think sometimes when you're in this situation where you feel you're not being listened to, you feel something's gone wrong, there's been arguments, it's hard to get yourself out of that headspace. But when you can sit down
Yes.
and you can have a refreshed look at it, and someone almost pushes the reset button briefly, so that you can just say, okay, well, what are the facts here? What are we talking about? And what is the solution that both parties want? And where can we is it finding that middle ground?
Often it's a middle ground, but sometimes it's sort of left or right of middle, because one party's been unreasonable and they will get an advantage with the middle ground. So again, it's the negotiation, the listening, the empathy, just giving people the right to talk and say, yeah, very good point, but have you thought of this? And the lawyers should take the background, not the back seat, not run it, because they can destroy. I've been in a mediation where the barrister, like, I'm a commercial lawyer. I'm not a litigator, although I understand litigation. So I will instruct barristers to act just like in England. So a solicitor instructs a barrister to go to court. So we do the same in New Zealand. But if you get a barrister acting for a franchisor or a franchisee in a mediation, it takes a different turn, because a commercial lawyer will be trying to get the deal done, preserve the relationship. A barrister will be trying to sort of take the upper ground, mentioning cases before, which can be appropriate, but can be too aggressive. So again, with the listening, this comes to mind, Harvey. So in one mediation, my client went first and poured her heart out, and the barrister on the other side kept interrupting her. And I said, please don't interrupt my client. She's saying her piece. And then the barrister's client said, and when no one interrupted, and then the barrister then talked, and I didn't interrupt the barrister. And then when I was wanting to talk as counsel, the barrister kept interrupting me. And I'm a very polite person, but I came to the point where I looked at this barrister on the other side and said, Deirdre, just shut up and let me talk. And the mediator was stunned and said, not, and of course the atmosphere in the room changed, and then I was free to talk, and she never interrupted me again. So it comes to a point of, you've got to have manners in the mediation, one person talking at a time, you listen to the other side. At any stage, you can ask for a break, not just a bathroom break, but I'm a great believer in saying, look, it's getting a bit heated on these points. Can we have 10 minutes? And I'll take my client into a room. And of course, mediation is basically getting all together with the mediator and then having these private sessions. So the mediator will take someone else and and come into the room with the franchisee and the lawyer and chat, and then do the other and come. So that's part of the mediation. But just those things we're talking about, just be polite, let people talk and listen.
Yeah, listening, it keeps coming back to that word. And I like the fact that you said manners. Manners are just very important. Also, what I thought was really interesting about what you said is, yes, you've got to be calm, but you've also got to stand your ground when things aren't, and that's, you've got to keep some sort of order and keep it a little bit calm, because if it's turning into a bit of a fight, everyone's interrupting each other, you're not achieving a huge amount by the conversation and the mediation. So yeah,
No,
it's really good.
correct.
Let's have another look, because we've still got some great comments. Let's get to those, because I still want to talk about a little bit about franchising in New Zealand for the last 10 minutes or so. Let's have a look at, first of all, welcome Nick to the show. Nick is from eTalent. Your QR code is up, my friend. So sorry to be late, but as they say, better late than never. Absolutely. Always good to have you here whenever you can, Nick. So let's have a look at this from Penny. I have always included detailed information on mediation in the ops manual. While we wouldn't want to suggest a breakdown of the relationship at the start, shouldn't a positive attitude to breach and cure be an important part of the initial training and franchise culture? Yeah, my view is yes. You should talk about if this happens, if it does go wrong, this is what we do. This is our mechanisms, because business and life doesn't always go the way you want it to, does it?
No, and Penny's right. I mean, you talk about it at an early stage as part of the training. You're telling the franchisee, you're in a system, comply with the system, it'll be good. But if there's a disagreement, there is a mechanism to sort out of the disagreement. And so that's part of the manual. But certainly at that stage with the training, the franchisee should have signed the franchise agreement, got independent legal advice before signing, and seen and read and noticed the dispute resolution clause in the franchise agreement. What happens if a franchise agreement doesn't have a dispute resolution clause? I would say it's defective, and I would make an issue on that. So all franchising lawyers who experience will put that in. If they don't put it in, there's something missing, and you've got a pretty crummy lawyer.
No, absolutely. No, I like the fact that Patrick has put totally agree. I'm going to keep that comment, Patrick. I can put that up any time, can't I, Patrick?
Good guy.
Great to have you. Let's have a little look. I want to make sure all of these comments are up before we move on. Mara's put Simon Wise, in my personal opinion, it's a huge no. That was when Simon was asking whether you need experience or not. So great to get, I think, great to get your views on that. Oh, we've got a good question here from Tim. Let's bring this one up. Right, this one. Tim's put, in your experience, what are the most common causes for the need for mediation?
Right. Okay. Common causes would be a breakdown in the relationship, not respecting the view of the franchisor or the franchisee and disagreeing with it, even if a clause says something. And I mean, parties can always just talk. So franchise, I just come back as a relationship. And then when you're in a relationship, you talk. And it doesn't always go 100%. So if you disagree with something, you talk about it and say, look, I don't like this marketing initiative because of these reasons, 1, 2, 3, 4. If the franchisor comes back and says, well, too bad, we're pursuing it, and you're in the system, you've got little say unless all the franchisees agree with you. So it's, I'm just such a great believer in talking early to try and resolve it. But if you can't, then that's an impasse, and the clause should say you've got to sit down now more formally to negotiate a position and resolve it, and the fallback is mediation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mara's come back here with failed expectations, which I think is in response to that question that Tim just put up about common reasons and causes for needing mediation. I think this is a really good one. Transparency in what we do in franchising is so important. So important that both sides, particularly people who are new to franchising, when they come in, understand exactly what it is that they are getting into, what they're signing up for, what's to be expected from them.
And that's why you need independent legal advice. A lawyer's got to advise the franchisee. This is really a relational agreement. You're expected to perform, and these are the main clauses. But above that, always talk to the franchisor. And if you make a mistake in something in a system, then you've got to get out of it. People make mistakes. I had a lady who came in once, and she was very adamant. She wanted to buy a shoe franchise, selling ladies' shoes. And Michael Hill Jeweller is a well-known brand in New Zealand for jewelry shops, but they diversified into shoe shops, and she wanted to be one of the first or second franchisees in shoes. So I said, have you ever worked in a shoe shop? And she said, no. And I said, well, you've got to, as part of the training, you'll go there, but go there now before you get into it, because you may not like it. And I was thinking of something, and I was right, because she came back and said, I can't stand the smell of smelly feet when people take off their shoes and put with BO in the feet. And she said, I just can't work in a shoe shop. I said, well, that was a good idea, wasn't it? Let's go to, do you like homemade bread or something? You want a bread shop, So again, you've got to choose your subject matter and not be afraid to say, look, I made a mistake, get out early. And I've acted for franchisees who have made a mistake. And the worst thing a franchisor can do is say, look, you've signed a 10-year agreement, you're locked in. You just say, look, we've got to exit. You made a mistake, I made a mistake, and we'll resolve it. That's not a mediation, that's a commercial negotiation.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I love what you said there. I mean, on our sister show on Franchising Brand Stories, when we tell these stories, often people are talking about passion as one of the things. Now, when I talk to franchisees, I always get them to picture working in a coffee shop, right? Because if they picture it, and I get them to describe it, right, vividly describe it. What does it smell like? Where is the sun coming in? Are you talking to the customers? And I think you're absolutely right to do that first. Go and work in a coffee shop, or go and do a day's training in a coffee shop. What does that feel like? Because yes, as a franchisee, you're not going to necessarily be serving coffee or doing the day-to-day, serving shoes, selling shoes, whatever it was. But you will have to get involved, and you've got to love it. You've got to love the process of what it is, and that. A good way to avoid mediation and litigation is to get it right as at the beginning and have good communication along the way, isn't it?
It is.
Let's have a look. I strongly suspect today we're not going to get to talk about franchising in New Zealand, but you know what? This is what I love about these conversations. There's a passion about mediation, clearly. So I think, Stuart, you're going to have to agree to come back onto this at some point. And we'll have a separate subject, if that's all right with you, yeah?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah. All I can say with franchising in New Zealand, it's very active, buoyant, and just like the UK. I mean, the British Franchise Association is a great body. It doesn't let anyone in to be members. It's selective, and the Franchise Association of New Zealand is the same. Right. And so I've just come back from the big conference in Las Vegas. So Pip Wilkins, the CEO of the BFA, was there. We had a World Franchise Council meeting, and there were about 30 countries meeting around the table. And that's very impressive. That just shows you the power of franchising worldwide. So although Harvey's not going to let me talk half an hour about New Zealand franchising because we haven't got time, it is very active. And of course, New Zealand and the UK has very strong bonds because we're part of the Gulf. And if you didn't know, Kiwis, that's what we call ourselves, when they're young, they tend to go overseas because we're sort of the bottom of the world. It's only 10 hours south to Antarctica. So it's the bottom of the world, and it's like it takes you 24 hours to get to London, basically. But we go to the UK. It's called the work experience. So there's a lot of Kiwis in London. Okay, so franchising in both countries is very active. But just don't forget what I said earlier. New Zealand is the most franchised country in the world with business format franchise systems per capita when you divide by the population.
It's a region that I think really is of interest to people from the UK, because I think there's some great similarities. There's some great similarities in how we do things and how we act, and cultural similarities. And I came across that in Canada a little bit when I talked to people from Canada, and I think I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'd love to do it today, but I don't think we can do it justice in 6 minutes or however long we've got until the next bit that we do. What I do want to do is I want to get to these comments. We've got 5 minutes left. Let's make sure that we get all of these comments in, because this is what it's all about. So let's have a look at this one from Mara. Side note, mediation in franchising in Italy is mandatory. Well, that's good to know. That there's a
Oh,
mechanism that is
great.
insisted upon. And should mediation be mandatory? There's a question. And I would say it's a good thing for it to be in mandatory within the
Yes.
system of franchising. I would say it's a good thing.
Well, there's no downside for having mediation because, as I
No,
said, it's a voluntary process with a very high success rate. So why wouldn't you want to try it ahead of arbitration and litigation?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
also private, so it's confidential. No one sort of knows about it. Whereas you go to litigation and it'll be in the papers if it's a big case with a big brand. Papers love all that. So yeah, I think it's a good
absolutely.
question.
It's a strange thing, isn't it? Because mediation is voluntary, so having it being mandatory is a strange sort of mix there. But I think
Yeah.
having it being mandatory as part of a franchise
Yes.
model is,
It's mandatory because you must try it,
yes,
and it
gotcha.
should work. But if it doesn't work, then you've actually tried it, which is great, and
And
you've identified the issues.
there
Yeah.
are other routes then,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yes.
Let's have a quick look here at a comment from Vikas. Vikas has put, I remember our mediation training. Our trainer told us franchise disputes across the world is one of the largest use cases where mediation is used and can be
Mm.
very effective. That's very interesting, Vikas. It's good to know that, actually. If that, I
Yeah.
haven't researched this fact, but if that, if it is a very popular way of resolving things, then that's good for our industry, that's something that people try. It must be because it's a
Yes.
relationship based business.
That's
Yeah,
right. Good comment. Very good.
definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look here. Mara's put, spoiler, I've become a government authorized mediator. After my
Oh, right.
15 years in the franchise field. Well, congratulations, Mara. Fantastic. Well,
Mm.
you've joined the right conversation today, Mara, that's for sure. And great to have you with us. We have the lovely Leslie Flowers with us. Leslie puts greetings, Harvey and guest. Well, it's good to have you with us, Leslie. Leslie is from America and she does a wonderful show based on the book Think and Grow Rich. And she's a good friend of mine. So always good to have you with us. Thanks, Leslie, and future guest as well. It's a little exclusive there. Patrick's come back with, here in Mexico, it's a little different. We have a lot of problems because the franchisors are not so transparent with the franchisee. Not all the brands, but a lot do it. And then we have to repair the relationship. Yes, transparency. We spoke about that, didn't we? Getting all the facts right at the beginning, making sure people are as best possible aligned when they're making their choices.
Yeah.
And then you've got the options.
And Har- and Harvey, can I make a comment here because I haven't made it? There's a doctrine of good faith around the world. In New Zealand, it comes into some cases. It's certainly in the code of practice. So both parties in a franchise agreement must act in good faith towards each other. And what does good faith mean? It means like telling the truth, being honourable. If there's facts to be disclosed and they're relevant and material, then to disclose them. So that's very strong. It's strong in the UK, and the franchisor can use it as a ground for issuing a termination notice to a franchisee because some franchisees choose not to act in good faith. An example of that is a system where I acted for the franchisor. There were 50 franchisees. One franchisee in particular had fallen out with the franchisor. The last thing you should do at 11 o'clock at night before you go to bed is send an email to all the franchisees denigrating the franchisor. And this person did that. And that was the start of the end for the franchisee because we issued a breach and then terminated her. She was poisonous to the system. So just remember those two words, good faith.
Good faith. And perhaps sleep on a decision as well. There's not
Yes.
many decisions that are made well at 11 o'clock at night.
No.
Normally
And
in the morning,
and
considering.
those emails should go into draft, because in the
Yes.
morning when you read it after a sleep and a coffee, you'll realize, my God, I'm so glad I
Oh,
hadn't said that. And as a lawyer, I do the same. If it's contentious and I'm tired, it goes into draft. It
sure.
doesn't get sent.
Go into drafts, write it down, because that
Write it down.
right? If you look at it 3 times and you still feel the same way 3 days later, then
Yes.
maybe you've got to send it. But
Yeah.
you know, it's a great lesson what you've just said there. Right, let's have a little look. We are running out of time today, but let's see if we can take another couple of questions. I do want to recognize the fact that we have Sam Hall here, and may I say, sir, fantastic hat in your picture. And Sam's put, good evening, friends from Southwest Virginia, USA. We are truly global today, aren't we?
Fantastic.
Great to have you. Great to have you here, Sam. Let's have a look at, there's a big comment coming in from Tim. Let's have a quick look at a comment from Simon, and we'll go to one from Tim. I've always thought that New Zealand is the natural global market for expansion for UK brands. The DNA is so similar, no surprises. Yeah, absolutely, Simon.
Well said, Simon. I like you even more now.
Absolutely. Right, let's have a look. Let's go for one more question. Oh, Sam's put, thanks. Just a boy in his Stetson. I like it. Let's have a look at Tim's comment, and that will probably have to be the last one before we start to wrap things up. This is a bit off subject, apologies. With over 500 franchise brands across a population of 5.6 million, it seems to be the general public would be very well informed about the franchise model and opportunity. How has the sector educated people so the 500 brands can flourish? In the UK, we have a major problem with public awareness of franchising. That's a great question. I wonder why it's so popular. That might have to be a question for our next episode, but unless you can answer that in a minute or so, it's up to you. Do you want to take that one, or should we save that for the next episode?
Yeah, I think save it, because that's a good question. It needs a really good detailed answer. Yeah.
It's a fantastic question, and you know what? We're definitely going to do another episode. When we have these conversations, they resonate with an audience and a community. And today, the subject of mediation has clearly resonated with the community. It clearly has. And we could go on having this conversation for a long time, but our lovely people have things to do. So, right, we have come to the new section of the show. And this is where we stop talking about mediation and we have a little chat to our lovely guest. And this is a point where I do disappear off the screen for a little bit of time. And that's because I'm putting on a different hat. And that's because this section of the show, and what do you think of my hat?
Oh, yes, very stylish.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you.
Yeah.
And this section of the show is brought to you by PJ Murphy, bespoke British hatters. So contact the lovely Paul if you would like a lovely hat like this one. So this is the section of the show where we get under the hat of the guest. So I'd like to just ask you a question, maybe something some people don't know about yourself. Have you met anyone famous? Have you got a claim to fame? Anything like that?
Oh gosh,
Let's go for, have you met anyone famous? Try that one.
Yeah, Tom Cruise, when he came to New Zealand. Yeah, he came and filmed The Last Samurai in New Zealand. I saw him in Auckland, and it was filmed in Taranaki and New Plymouth. But a true story of Tom Cruise, who I really love with the Mission Impossibles and Top Gun, is that he was driving his Land Rover back, and a lady had broken down the car. The car was on the side of the road, and he was about 2K from New Plymouth, which is a city. And he said, "Would you like a lift, lady, to New Plymouth?" And she said, "No, I don't get in with strangers." to a car. And he said, "Oh, that's fine. I've just been filming. I'm Tom Cruise." And she said, "Where do I sit?" That's a true. That's a true story, which went all over New Zealand and I think the world. And I think they had fish and chips together at the fish and chip shop in New Plymouth. So
Oh, I
I've
love
met
that.
him. I've met him. And then Bill Clinton came to New Zealand for Choggum years ago, and he was a hit. He went shopping in Parnell and bought things, but he was a real hit because we had Air Force One here. So
Oh,
they're two,
amazing.
they're two standout people. One's a
Fantastic.
politician and one's an actor.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, look, tradition is now that you do get I've been asking you questions all this time and you've been wonderfully answering them. It's time for you to get your own back, and you can, if you wish, ask me a question. But if you don't, I can get away with it, and I never mind that either.
It will, one question I'd love to ask you, Harvey, because I know
Yeah,
you live in Hastings,
I do.
and you haven't been there since 1066 because you're not old enough.
Well, I've got a great beard.
So, why do you wear a hat? I'm sort of guessing a few reasons, but I'd like to know. Sort of
The story behind the hat, which I think some people have heard, but
yeah.
when I originally was on LinkedIn, I met a chap called Don Cohen. He wore a hat. He had a show about mindset. I was invited on to be a guest after commenting in the audience, and he made the
Ah,
audience feel part of a show, and I loved it. And I was a guest a few times. He wore a hat, so I went out and bought one. And someone mentioned something about Indiana Jones, so I wore it again.
yes, yes.
And I don't know, at a certain point, I think at the beginning, it gave me a sense of confidence that I didn't have before, like it was a character or chur or something. But it then became a thing, and everyone knew me for wearing the hat. And I thought either I'll stop wearing the hat or I'll embrace wearing a hat. And you probably can guess which one I did.
Yeah. No, I think it's great because it's like an icon. It's something different. You always think of Harvey and the hat. Uh,
That's it. That's it. An accidental stroke of marketing genius. There you go.
yes.
Anyway, look, we have now come to the end, so I'm just going to talk about what's happening later this week on our sister show. So on Franchising Brand Stories this Thursday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST, and some other time in New Zealand, 6:15 AM, I think.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Um, we are talking and finding out what's under the hat of FranRec. So we have the wonderful Simon Wise, our sponsor for Franchising Brand Stories, and he's going to tell us his story. So it's going to be a fascinating one. So please join us this Thursday for that. And next Tuesday, the 25th of February, join us for the franchise show. And we have got the topic, how do your franchisees feel? So it's going to be a very interesting one to try and understand how our franchisees are feeling and how we can best react to that. So please join us next Tuesday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST for the franchise show. Neil Newman from Gather will be our guest. So it's going to be a fantastic conversation. I would like to thank everybody who's been here live. You are the producers, the directors of this show. You're what makes this show special. And I thank you every week for your time and your input. And I'd like to thank you, Stuart. You've been a wonderful guest. Your knowledge is fantastic. You're humble, and it was a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you, Harvey. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, you're most welcome. So until next time, my friends, take fantastic care. Cheerio.